What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Graham Jason Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network and on Peacock. And today we're talking the Bray Wyatt Becoming Immortal special that aired on Peacock a few weeks back in early April, right before WrestleMania. That's when they put it up. It took me about 2 weeks to finally watch it. It was one of those situations where, one, it was 2 hours, so it was going to take 2 hours for me to watch it. But also the case where I didn't want to sit down to watch it because I knew I would be a fucking mess watching this documentary. And that's exactly what happened. I watched it with Alexis. We were both just blubbering and just tears were falling throughout this documentary at many different points. And not just during the point in which they're talking about the day of he passed away and the aftermath and stuff like that, the impact he had on people. The entire thing is emotional. This is a very tough, rough watch. So you probably know that going in, but it's a 5-star documentary, one of the best they've ever done, exceptionally well put together, great interviews from the family, talent. You got random people like Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair in there, probably just to add some notable names, brother, but beyond that sort of stuff, like you get Bo Dallas, aka Taylor Rotunda in there, the sister, Micah, his parents, JoJo's in the documentary, Jason Baker, who worked really closely with Bray during his most recent run in the company on like the Fiend mask and like the Firefly stuff and so much more. So I thought that was really, really cool, and I thought they did a great job of, moreover than anything else, not only doing Bray Wyatt justice, Wyndham Rotunda justice, but also showing a lot of behind-the-scenes footage of Wyndham when he first came back to the company, but also during the Firefly Fun House days and even stuff prior to that point. It was Bray out of character as Wyndham. And that, to me, and for a lot of other people, was like the most intriguing aspect of the character. The character itself was great throughout his entire run in WWE. The character was never really in question. But the man putting on the character and the mindset that went into a lot of the stuff that he did, stuff that he said on screen, off screen, was fascinating. And we finally, after all these years, got a great look at that in this documentary. So this was amazing. We'll get into it here. And they mention right off the bat, too, that it contains unheard and unseen footage never before shown anywhere else, which is really, really cool. So they start at the very beginning, talking about how he grew up in Brooksville, Florida, him and his brother and his whole family, really. His father wrestled, his uncles wrestled, it kind of ran in the family, obviously. Bray Windham was born in Wyndham Rotunda. I'm going to call him Wyndham. He was born in 1987. 10 pounds out of the gate. They talked about how he was addicted to Ghostbusters and Beetlejuice and Goosebumps, a lot of creepy sort of stuff growing up, and that's where his fascination with like the supernatural kind of came from. Taylor, a.k.a. Bo Dallas, of course, was born 3 years later. I think Micah, the sister, the youngest of the three, was born another 3 years after that, if I'm not mistaken. Their dad ended up becoming IRS, after the U.S. Express stuff, and they were just inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame over WrestleMania weekend. Wyndham did a lot of contact sports, including amateur wrestling, which I actually did not know. They show a lot of footage of that. He did football as well. He actually won the Wrestling Heavyweight State Championship in high school, graduated in 2005, and was going to continue on pursuing football. Again, another thing I did not know. And he did junior college football, transferred to Alabama. His sister, Micah, talks about how he came home to accompany her to homecoming. Taylor talks about how, he tried out for the wrestling team and Wyndham couldn't make a lot of the meets because he was at school. But he said, listen, I'll be there for the championship match because I know you're going to make it that far. Taylor ended up getting hurt and he was really heartbroken, thinking he was going to let down his brother. Wyndham comes home. He was already waiting in the driveway, gives him a big old hug and says, and none of this shit matters. So Wyndham ended up leaving the Troy football team and joined WWE Developmental with Taylor together. Soon after winning the FCW Tag Team Championships, Cena actually was really impressed with him out of the gate. I did not know that Cena was even aware of Wyndham, of Bray, around that point. I thought it was much later on. But he was already aware of him through his work in FCW and invited him to train at the Hard Knocks workout center, whatever, that Cena is very closely associated with. They've shown it on WWE TV before. So he ended up debuting on NXT TV in 2010, as we know, as Husky Harris. That was back when NXT was the competition show, that shitty competition show. Cody Rhodes, of all people, was actually his pro. And that was around the time that Cody Rhodes was doing the dashing character. So what a dichotomy that was. What a dynamic that they had back then. And if Bray was still around, that would have been an amazing feud to do on WWE TV. Bray and Cody kind of playing off that history from 2010. So he thought, as we all did, that the name was a shot at his weight. Because he wasn't Husky Harris in FCW. He was Wyndham. Was he just Wyndham Rotunda? I forgot what his name was in FCW. But, giving him the name Husky Harris, and he wasn't a small guy, he thought, he was kind of offended. He thought the name was a shot at his weight, understandably so. And they talk about like the behind the scenes stuff and what was going on in his personal life as well. A lot of stuff that's probably on his Wikipedia page that I just wasn't really aware of myself personally. He was first married in 2010. JoJo, they never ended up getting married. They were engaged to be married later on this year or last year, whenever it was. But he was married first in 2010. They had a daughter, and they talk about that. I forgot what her name was, but she is also interviewed for the documentary, which was really cool. It was around this time that Triple H saw what he was doing on the main roster, and he ended up getting called up as part of the Nexus, doing this stuff with Michael McGillicuddy, ended up getting booted off television, ironically by Randy Orton, who ended up becoming a big rival of his on the main roster. They first feuded in 2010, 2011, before the 2017 stuff and the 2020, 2021 stuff, whatever. So Triple H wanted to repackage him. Seeing that there was something there with him, brought him right back down to FCW and was thinking, listen, we got to repackage this guy. The Husky Harris stuff clearly isn't working, but we see something else in him. So they talk about, Taylor does, and you also hear the audio footage of Bray talking about it, probably in a Zoom interview or a phone interview. They don't show him talking. I mean, they do at other points, but they show him talking about the character, but it was only audio. They don't show it, but you hear it. So I'm thinking this was probably like an out-of-character interview or on like the Ryan Satin out-of-character podcast from a year ago, or whatever it might have been. But they mentioned how he was obviously inspired by Waylon Mercy in the movie Cape Fear. I think Robert De Niro's part in that movie specifically, I believe. He blew everyone away in promo class. His cousin's name was Wyatt, so that's where Wyatt came from. Dusty Rhodes, obviously very high on him. He was one of his biggest supporters in developmental. He ended up bringing in Luke Harper into the act, and we hear about Luke, and obviously he has since passed away as well, which is just... You got to put yourself in the shoes of Eric Rowan and Braun Strowman. Specifically Eric Rowan, who spent so many years with these guys, and both of them are now gone. I mean, how devastating is that? Let alone one. Both of them being gone is just crazy. So, Luke was brought in first, and they show the making of the vignettes that they used in NXT first, which I didn't remember because I wasn't watching NXT back then. There was like about a year. I watched the shitty competition show, but I fell out of it in 2012 when it moved into what it was at Full Sail. And then I got back into it in the summer of 2013. So when they were doing that, I kind of missed the majority of his NXT run. But what he was doing around that point with the vignettes, they ended up reusing those, repurposing them for the main roster about a year later. So they show the making of those, which I thought was really, really cool. Rowan ended up debuting as the second son of the Wyatt family. He was previously a Viking, and they repackaged them as part of the Wyatt family, the perfect fit for the group. And he mentioned how he brought a bag of masks with him to kind of, because they told him, no, they wanted him to wear a mask. So he brought a whole bunch of masks to try out for this part, basically. And one of the masks that he had was a sheep mask, and they thought that's the perfect fit. So they settled on the sheep mask. They actually drew inspiration, Eric Rowan says, who's also obviously interviewed for this documentary. He mentions how they drew inspiration from people on death row. Like what they would say before they were being killed. Like that's the stuff they would use in their promos. I thought that was fucking fascinating. That was really, really cool. So Bray ends up having a second daughter in 2013. Around that point gets the main roster call up. All three of them do in July of 2013. There's not really much that he did. They gloss over the entire Daniel Bryan portion of the feud of his main roster run, which is unfortunate because Daniel Bryan was such a big part of Bray Wyatt's career, giving him probably the best match he ever had in WWE. The best match he had, period, might have been the Shield match, but the best singles match he ever had was early on in his run in 2014 at the Royal Rumble with Daniel Bryan. And they had some more matches years later when he was The Fiend, and those were good matches too, but that was probably his best. And obviously Daniel Bryan's in AEW now, so they couldn't interview him for this, but he would have been the perfect person to really talk about Bray and their feud, and how it really put not only Bray on the map, but it elevated Daniel Bryan as well. Daniel Bryan wasn't doing a whole lot in late 2013, early 2014 before the Authorities stuff kicked back up again, and the Yes movement really kind of got out of control with, we have no choice but to push this guy. But he was kept busy with the Wyatt stuff, and it was some really, really strong storytelling and great moments, very good matches. So it's unfortunate they couldn't interview him for this, but anyway. They kind of fast forward to the John Cena feud in early 2014. They do show John Cena beating him at WrestleMania. That, to me, is still one of the dumbest decisions in WrestleMania history. Maybe not the worst booking decision, but it's certainly up there. I thought that was so fucking dumb that he lost. He obviously rebounded. He had some staying power, longevity, but it took Bray Wyatt a very long time to bounce back from that. But Cena did say, he had a meteoric rise, and it's like, well, he could have had a quicker rise had you not fucking beaten him at WrestleMania. It's still very dumb in retrospect. And no, I hardly count Wyatt beating Cena the following month at Extreme Rules. That match sucked. That steel cage match sucked. And Wyatt winning did nothing to benefit him at all. So they talk about how the fans created the Fireflies with their phones and how it created this amazing atmosphere every time he would come out for his entrance. And he was always out of character during meet and greets. This is probably more so years later, like in 2016, 2017, when he'd been there for a while. But they show him during meet and greets and how he was out of character, always being nice. And it made me emotional watching that because Alexis and I actually met him out of character, as Wyndham, obviously, back in April of 2022. So about 2 years ago this month, we met him over WrestleMania weekend. And he was Alexis's absolute favorite. And we were all emotional during the moment because she had never met him before, and he was like an inspiration for her, and he was amazing. He could not have been cooler in the few times that we interacted that weekend. So that kind of brought me back to that. And that also made me emotional, watching that part with him, with the fans and stuff like that. So we hear Wyndham talking about working with The Undertaker and how huge of an honor that was for him going into WrestleMania 31. Taker is actually the narrator for this documentary, which I thought was really, really cool. And sometimes with these documentaries, the narrator doesn't really break that fourth wall. Like, I know John Cena has done some narration on stuff before. I forgot that what that would be, but he's done narration in other documentaries and shit, and he doesn't acknowledge the obvious. Like with here, anyway. Maybe it was like the Cody Rhodes one that he narrated. I don't remember, but this one, Taker's like, oh yeah, working with Wyndham. Like, he's talking in narrator mode, mentioning himself and the work he did with Wyndham, saying that, oh yeah, working with Bray really got my confidence back. So I thought that was cool too. We hear about Braun Strowman being introduced into the group, and Strowman says that Wyndham really treated him like a brother. They show the interaction they had with The Rock at WrestleMania 32. It was a big moment for Bray and the Wyatt family, but it's also like they cut out the part where Bray was like, or Rock called Bray the eater of Hot Pockets, or whatever dumb shit that he said. Again, doing the Wyatt family no favors at all, but it was a big moment to be interacting with The Rock of all people at WrestleMania for sure. So he ends up winning the WWE Championship, albeit a year later. He was doing a whole lot of nothing in the meantime. He got hurt, took time off, turned face for like 2 weeks, got hurt, came back, whatever. He ended up winning the WWE Championship at Elimination Chamber 2017. And it was a great moment, a great match, probably one of, if not the best Elimination Chamber match in WWE history. An amazing moment as well. Ended up losing the belt right back to Randy Orton at WrestleMania 33, which was so stupid. Orton did not need it. The match sucked. The storyline was great. The match was awful. Did not need the championship either. But it was cool that Bray got his moment as WWE Champion, if nothing else. So they also mentioned around this point he was growing apart from his wife. He was never really home. And they mentioned how he was really devastated by the divorce. So he was kind of going through a tough spell in 2017, 2018. Triple H would always ask Wyndham, like, would all these ideas, and I thought this was cool that he mentioned this, because he's mentioned this elsewhere before as Triple H and other people, like what Wyndham's ideas were. Would this work in the ring? This is great, like the Fiend stuff is great, this, whatever character is great, but how would this work? How does this translate to the ring? And that was always a big question. Like the Uncle Howdy, Bray Wyatt stuff that we were seeing in late 2022, early 2023 was intriguing, but it went on for so long because he may not have been cleared, but they waited way too long to get him in the ring. And that first match back was 5 minutes and not all that good between him and LA Knight. But it just didn't really translate all that well to the ring. So they were just kind of around every week, not doing a whole lot of anything. And I thought it was really interesting he brought that up. So he was in a rut creatively around that point, was Bray. JoJo, whose interview talks about how they started dating, they started to talk and then date. Soon after, in late 2018, early 2019, I think it was, they welcomed their first child. It must have been 2018 because they had their first child in 2019. So he obviously didn't meet her after she was pregnant. She gave birth in 2019, so they must have met in 2017. And she already worked there too. In what capacity they would have, probably as a ring announcer actually, because JoJo was a ring announcer for Raw for a few years before she ended up, leaving the road and not coming back as she was a mother. But they had their first child, Nash, in 2019. They had another daughter right after, like about a year later. So she gave birth, and then she was pregnant again soon after. And that baby was born, I believe, in 2020. So he had an idea for a new character in early 2019. And he was told that creative had nothing for him, which makes no fucking sense to me. Like, how do you have nothing for Bray Wyatt? This would have been early 2019. He was doing jack shit. He wasn't around. He came back right after WrestleMania in 35 doing the whole Firefly Fun House thing. But they didn't have any ideas for him, which, again, blew my mind. How do you not have anything for Bray Wyatt? That just doesn't make sense for me. But he took matters into his own hands and came up with the whole Firefly Fun House character. That was completely his creation. And Bruce Pritchard, who is also interviewed for this thing, was, I don't want to say instrumental, because I don't know how much credit you can really give him, but he was involved in the process. That was around the time Bruce Pritchard came back to the company, so creatively he was involved pretty heavily with the Firefly Funhouse stuff early on. And he mentioned how the Firefly Funhouse only existed in the mind of Bray Wyatt, like storyline-wise. It wasn't a real place that you could go to. Which is why it was kind of dumb when Seth Rollins went to the Firefly Funhouse in late 2019 and they burned it down. That whole thing was so fucking stupid. So if it wasn't a real place, then how did that happen? You know what I mean? But they revealed that each of the puppets in the Firefly Funhouse kind of they represented something or someone. So a lot of these are pretty obvious, but Huskus was Bray, as Husky Harris, of course. Waylon was kind of represented by, or was a representation of Waylon Mercy, again, obvious. Abby's sister Abigail, again, pretty clear. The Rabbit, Ramblin' Rabbit, which I thought was interesting. This was always speculation, but they mention and confirm it here that the Rabbit was pretty much the idea that fans had that Bray Wyatt would always ramble in his promos. So his rambling promos were represented through Ramblin' Rabbit, which I thought was really, really interesting. Like the meta, idea behind that, the concept behind it, I thought was really meta and really cool. So Orton mentions how there was always a sellout at the monitors. Every time a new episode of the Firefly Funhouse would come on, there was always a sellout at the monitors, meaning that the entire backstage locker room would hover around the monitors trying to watch whatever Bray was doing inside the Firefly Funhouse. They showed the, Fiend stuff, the Fiend debuting in the summer of 2019, that leading to SummerSlam 2019, where he beat Finn Balor as the Fiend. And he comes backstage, again, we see footage we've never seen before where he says, that's the coolest thing I've ever done, which is really cool that he said that. That's cool that he had that moment. So they also go through the Firefly Funhouse match. They don't mention that he won the championship. They completely gloss over Hell in a Cell 2019. They completely gloss over him losing the championship to Goldberg, which were two big down points in his career and had nothing to do with him. It had entirely to do with the dumb creative decisions being made at that point. God, the product was fucking awful back then. So they do fast forward to the Firefly Funhouse and the making of that. I thought it was cool. They mentioned how it would normally take weeks to kind of perfect something like that, like a movie. They did it in 2 days due to COVID. So it went from being a regular match, which would probably have not have been that good, but it turned into a cinematic match, which was easily the best thing that could have happened to that match between Cena and Bray. Now it's one of the most memorable matches in recent WWE history. So they talk about that. They also talk about incorporating Alexa Bliss into the act. We hear from her. They also mention Luke Harper passing away, John Huber passing away in December of 2020. And they have an interview with Bray talking about John, talking about Harper. And it's interesting because I don't know what this would have been used for, because WWE did a few different tributes for Luke Harper right after he passed away that they put up on their YouTube channel and stuff like that. I thought that was really interesting because they show Wyndham crying. They show him crying and getting really emotional and how his brain didn't want to let him believe that it was real. And I'm thinking, like, what would this interview have been used for? Of him talking about, Luke Harper and stuff like that. Because I don't think it ever made it in any of those tributes. I could be wrong, but Bray was off the show at that point. So I don't think they ever really showed him any of this footage on WWE TV. So I thought that was interesting. But they mentioned how because of that, he really struggled emotionally and professionally after that. Pritchard said that he was really strong-willed. Again, we've heard this a lot before from Triple H as well, but they mentioned it here. Like how he didn't like people getting involved with his vision and didn't want anyone messing with it, and they couldn't really translate it to television. I mean, that is true. I'm sure Bray was difficult to work with to a certain extent, But at the same time, they're not going to say it here. Their own creative, what they had him doing was fucking terrible. It was terrible. Like, a lot of what The Fiend did was amazing. But there were a lot of points, like the Goldberg loss, like the Rollins Hell in the Cell nonsense, losing to Randy Orton at WrestleMania 37. Why? What was the point of that? Orton didn't even want to do anything. Orton won that match and did nothing. They actually teamed him up with Matt Riddle after that. Like, he didn't need to beat Bray Wyatt. That was so stupid. Alexa Bliss didn't do anything after that, after turning on Bray Wyatt. It was dumb. It was really, really dumb. It still makes no sense why they did that in retrospect. It makes no sense. They show how frustrated he was the day of TLC 2020 when they did the, the Ring of Fire match, the Inferno match. And he got lit on fire, and they didn't really think about how all the stuff that he'd be wearing would be destroyed. And he wasn't happy about that. His gear was legitimately burned. It was hard to move around in that burned suit, which is why they ended up having him back to they had him go back to the regular suit for WrestleMania. They did that whole montage of him coming out with the burn suit, and then it turns into the regular suit, like he was resurrected. But he lost anyway. He lost at WrestleMania 37 anyway, which was terrible. So he was frustrated that his vision was being messed with. He was really pissed off about that. Within a couple of months, Bo Dallas Taylor gets released in early 2021. Bo wasn't even on TV anyway. Bo, I couldn't even tell you prior to his release. I mean, I thought he might have been released in 2020. I guess it was 2021. Prior to that point, I couldn't even tell you the last time that Bo Dallas was on WWE television. He was never on WWE TV up until that point. Maybe early 2020, late 2019. It had been a long time, so his release wasn't much of a shock. But they let go of Bray, too. They let go of Wyndham in the summer of 2021, and that shocked everyone. And his mom mentions that it destroyed him. But they show off an art room that he had, which I thought was really cool. JoJo shows off an art room where he would go to make paintings of her, the kids, and other stuff. And she still has all of them, which is really cool. And they also mentioned that he started filming a reality TV pilot with Taylor, with Bo. And they show footage from that. I would love to see that get released. I don't know if it's just not finished. Obviously, the show itself wasn't finished, but they filmed the pilot. Like, they showed footage from it. Why can't they release the entire pilot on its own? I think that'd be cool. So yeah, that was something I did not know. Where he was completely out of character, obviously, as well. So both he and Taylor, Wyndham and Taylor, started talking about returning to wrestling in the summer of 2020. Now, there had been a lot of reports around then. Was AEW interested? Did TNA want him? You know, I don't know how much of that was true. I guess we'll never know unless, like, JoJo comes out and talks about it. But I don't know how close he would have been going there. I guess he just wasn't interested. He probably didn't want to wrestle anywhere for a while. But in the summer of 2020, when Triple H took over, was around the time, you know, he was interested again, so it kind of worked out perfectly. Triple H recalls their phone call, mentioning their phone call about him coming back, and he said, yeah, I'd love to come back, and it was kind of a more matter of what they could do to make it happen. And they show all the White Rabbit teases, and they worked on that. He, Triple H, and Rob Fee, Bray's kind of personal writer, and he still works there now as like a long-term storyteller type guy. They also mentioned that they reached out to Tyson Kidd, TJ Wilson, and Natalya about using their ring to train in before he came back. And they had to keep it on the down low, like don't tell anyone sort of thing, blah, blah, blah. So then Taylor also started pursuing the comeback, seeing that Wyndham was kind of getting back into it. He also wanted to come back and started to wrestle again and stuff like that. They show Wyndham being really nervous before his return, and he mentions that, I don't get nervous often, but I'm nervous before this. So that footage was really cool. Jason Baker, who they show throughout the entire documentary, showing off his gear, a lot of stuff he didn't have a chance to wear, stuff like that. He chose Jason to be the Fiend the night that he came back at Extreme Rules 2020. We were at that show. Alexis and I went to that show solely because we thought Bray was coming back, and he did. So it worked out well. Just an amazing moment, but to have Jason be the one to portray the Fiend in that moment was, I thought, really, really fucking cool as well. So they replay the return. He thought, when he got back through the curtain after it was over, big reaction from in the arena, but also from people behind the scenes. He mentions to the camera, out of character, I felt like I was hovering out there. That's how amazing that moment was to me. They also replay his return promo on SmackDown the subsequent Friday, and how emotional that was with him out of character, and it really meant a lot to him. And JoJo mentions how that time off really reminded him of how much he meant to people, because without that, he would have never known how much he meant to his fans and the audience and stuff like that. So I thought that was cool. They do confirm, obviously, that Bo Dallas Taylor was Uncle Howdy. That was the whole point. And he mentions how awesome it was to be working alongside his brother. Wyndham even told Triple H says that he talks about how much his return meant to him. Like, thank you so much for having me back. I've been having so much fun. And, we had a lot of criticism for not the return itself, but like what they did with him after the fact, like the LA Knight stuff. The feud itself with LA Knight was great, but like they dragged it on for too long and the ultimate match wasn't all that good. So, I don't know, it was one of those things where they just didn't really have a lot to go off of for a long period of time. But it did mean a lot to Bray to be back. So he ended up having his last match on February 23rd, 2023. He injured his knee, I guess, in a match against LA Knight, and LA Knight is interviewed for this, and he mentioned that, Wyndham was like kind of hurt towards the end of it, and I don't think that had anything to do with his ultimate condition and getting COVID. But he got hurt in that match, which is why he was off the show for like a couple weeks. So that was February 23rd. And around this time, they were teasing the WrestleMania match with Bobby Lashley. He tested positive for COVID, and it really weakened his heart. And he fell off and all this other sort of stuff. And he ended up getting cleared to do light cardio, but he still wasn't really himself. And they do mention that he was close to a comeback or he was about to be cleared, which that to me is weird because they ended up giving him a vest because he started sweating more and more and all this other sort of stuff. Like he had a lot of off moments, but they gave him a vest where if his heart stopped beating, if his heart stopped working, it would shock him back. Now, if that's what he was dealing with, then how could he have ever wrestled again? Now, Keith Lee did deal with something similar where he almost died due to COVID a couple of years ago, and he's wrestling again. But so I don't know. It's a very weird thing with Bray because they were mentioning how, and that was the report as well, that he's close to a comeback, and they even mentioned that here, like he thought he was coming back. If they thought he was coming back while he still had that vest on, how would that even have worked? Like, I always thought when he passed away, he's never going to wrestle again. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, so he started sweating more and more, like more than usual. He took a nap, had to go to the hospital. They gave him a vest to shock him if his heart stopped, like I mentioned. He had a follow-up with the doctor on August 24th. And before he could go to the doctors, he picked up his kids from school. His first set of kids, not the kids that he had with JoJo. Because he mentioned that he talked to his ex-wife and said, hey, can I pick up the kids from school today? He did. Got home, told JoJo, hey, I'm a bit tired, let me take a nap, whatever. His alarm went off, he slept through the alarm. JoJo tried to go wake him up, and he wouldn't wake up, and he was just unresponsive. So they rushed him to the hospital, and then they found out that he passed away, and they just couldn't believe it. They were all hysterical. Taylor recalls having the strength to hold up his family in that moment when, normally he wouldn't have a chance to after hearing he passed away, knowing that Wyndham was with him in that moment. Calling it also the worst day of his life, as you could probably expect. They showed Triple H talking to the roster before SmackDown, because they did SmackDown the next day. They did a whole tribute episode of Wyndham, and they showed Paul Levesque, Triple H, addressing the roster about the situation, and everyone's emotional. They showed the 10-bell salute on SmackDown. Superstars paying tribute in the days that followed at house shows and talking about Wyndham and all this other sort of stuff. They talk about all the lives that he touched across the world and how loved he was by his fans. Again, it's really emotional to watch all of this, knowing the impact that he had on people and his fans and the roster and officials and everything like that. They also showed some footage of his funeral and all the people that were there. And you do see some AEW talent, like Dustin Rhodes was there. Big Show was there. A number of people from all companies, really, but it was interesting they showed that on camera. And who gives a shit? The company thing doesn't even matter when it comes to something like this, but I just thought it was worth mentioning. But it was a really emotional scene, and everyone kind of dressed in red and black, I believe, because he mentioned how one of his lines was, "I'm the color red in a world of black and white," which was such a powerful quote. I don't know if he got that from someone else or if that was like a line of his that he came up with. I'm not sure. But I thought that was interesting. And they had like the smoke, like what Bray Wyatt, what Wyndham would have wanted for a funeral of his. That's what he would have done for anyone else. And that's what he would have wanted for him. And to close out the documentary, they show Jason Baker showing off the Fiend gear that he never had a chance to wear before passing away. So I thought that was cool. He calls him his best friend, and it really hit him hard to not have him here. They show his kids, all four of them, to close out the documentary. And to start the doc and to end the doc, they recite the love tweet, like the Love is Wrestling tweet or whatever it was that he put out. I think it was, I don't know if it was after he came back or before he came back, but he wrote this tweet talking about like love or whatever. It was like this really powerful tweet. And Taker, as the narrator, recites it to start the documentary and to end the documentary, which I thought was great. And then, of course, as everyone probably knows by now, they also end the documentary with a teaser for Uncle Howdy. And we've been seeing that sort of stuff on Raw in recent weeks since this aired 2 weeks ago. And it's been really cool, and it's been great to see Bo back in the mix doing his thing. I assume we're getting some sort of like Wyatt 6 sort of angle. I'm really looking forward to seeing that and how that kind of develops and what it's going to look like and whatever. So yeah, I thought this was an amazing documentary to say the least. A very emotional, tough watch. Even, it came out 2 weeks later, and he also passed away 8 months ago. But it really hasn't worn off. It doesn't even feel real still that he's not here, that Wyndham is not here with us. So I thought they did a tremendous job of paying tribute to Wyndham, showing his career and getting a lot of great people to talk to for the documentary. The behind-the-scenes stuff, in addition to the honoring the career and life of Wyndham, specifically his life, the behind-the-scenes stuff is like one of the most must-see aspects of this documentary. The footage, the audio, hearing his mindset behind a lot of things that he was doing and talking about on WWE television was fascinating, including the release. You don't really hear a lot of comments from Wyndham about the release because they didn't interview him, obviously. He did no interviews while he was gone. So you don't hear from him about that. But, just talking about the stuff that he was doing when he came back and how excited he was, that was really cool to see. So we had that moment. He had that run before he passed away in 2023. And that whole thing was just, again, it's crazy. The whole thing is just simply surreal. So check out the documentary, Bray Wyatt Becoming Immortal. They did an amazing job with it. And it's well worth the watch. Even 2 hours, it doesn't even feel like 2 hours. The thing flies by. And all I'll say is prepare some boxes of tissues to have on standby for when you're watching this documentary. You're definitely going to need them. I'll tell you that much. So thank you guys for checking out my review of this documentary. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Have an awesome one, folks. I'm Graham G. S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.